You prepared. You researched the company before the interview. You read the onboarding documents. You showed up early on the first day, dressed deliberately, took notes on everything, and made a point of learning every name in the room. You were present. You were engaged. You were doing everything a serious, capable professional is supposed to do when they walk into a new role. And somewhere in that first month, without a meeting, without a memo, without a single conversation that felt significant, a conclusion was being reached about you. Not by what you failed to do, by what you didn't know to do. There is a silent rule operating inside every organization during those first 90 days. It was never in the onboarding packet. Nobody scheduled a session to explain it. And breaking it doesn't look like a mistake. It looks exactly like doing everything right. My name is Jackson. This channel exists to show you the structure underneath the surface. And this one starts on your very first day. Picture someone, a strong hire, the kind of candidate the company moved quickly to close. New title, meaningful compensation increase. A role with actual scope, actual authority, actual possibility. The offer letter arrived on a Thursday. The notice was given that same afternoon. The first day is a Tuesday in early spring. Blazer, 12 minutes early. The manager walks this person through what gets called an integration timeline. 90 days to get oriented. 90 days to understand the culture. 90 days before real contributions begin. It is framed generously. It sounds like patience, like space, like the organization extending a reasonable runway to someone it believes in. The new hire nods. Take notes on everything. What happens after that meeting in the manager's office, on a screen the new hire will never see, is a file being opened, a tracker, columns for 30-day read, 60-day read, 90-day decision. A final column labeled simply outcome. A note is typed under the first column before the week is finished. For the next 90 days, this person does everything correctly. Learn the org chart. Attends every optional meeting. Volunteers for work nobody else wanted. Stay visible, stays engaged. Believes, sincerely, that the scoreboard is being built in real time and that the performance so far is strong. The question they never think to ask is the one that would have changed everything. What scoreboard is the organization actually keeping? That question points to the silent rule. And the silent rule is this. The 90 days were never designed for the new hire's benefit. They were designed for the organization's decision. Those are not the same purpose. And confusing them is the mistake almost every new employee makes. Mechanism number 1, the evaluation window. The 90-day period exists in nearly every major organization in roughly the same form. The reason is not cultural, it is structural. 3 months is the window during which the cost of a hiring correction is lowest. Benefits have not been vested, equity has not triggered. Severance clauses, buried in onboarding documentation that new hires read but rarely analyze, typically specify that terminations within the first 90 days carry no payout obligation beyond accrued salary. The organization has not given the new hire 90 days to settle in. The organization has given itself 90 days to decide at the lowest possible cost whether the hire was correct. This is not malicious. It is rational. Every hiring decision carries risk, and organizations manage risk through structured evaluation windows. The problem is not that the window exists. The problem is that new hires are almost never told what the window is actually measuring, and so they optimize for the wrong signals entirely. The 90-day period is a low-cost decision window dressed in the language of orientation. Understanding the difference changes everything that happens inside it. Mechanism number 2, the invisible scorecard. Every organization runs 2 parallel performance systems during an evaluation period. The visible system is documented. Training completion, meeting attendance, early deliverables, stated targets. New hires can see this system. They optimize for it instinctively because it is legible and because the onboarding process points directly at it. The invisible system is never written down. It tracks things the organization cannot put in a formal document, whether the new hire's communication style registers as confident or uncertain in their first all-hands presentation, how they handle the first moment of genuine ambiguity when the answer is not available, and a choice must be made about whether to guess or ask, which senior stakeholders took notice in week 2, and which ones formed no impression at all. These invisible data points accumulate continuously. They are recorded in files and mental models that the new hire cannot access. By the time the visible metrics are being formally reviewed, the invisible scorecard has often already produced a conclusion. The metrics that determine trajectory are precisely the ones that were never explained. The onboarding packet describes the visible system. The invisible one governs the outcome. Mechanism number 3, the performance compression effect. Experienced managers understand something about 90-day behavior that new hires almost never account for. The version of a person visible in the first month is not the baseline version. It is a compressed, elevated performance running slightly above what is sustainable long-term. New hires are operating with heightened alertness, displaying more initiative than they will maintain at full pace, suppressing doubts they would ordinarily surface, asking fewer difficult questions than they will once comfort sets in. Managers who have run multiple evaluation cycles know this. They are not calibrating for what the elevated performance shows. They are calibrating for what it is hiding. The questions being considered are not whether the new hire can learn the role that was established before the offer was made. The questions are whether their judgment matches the environment, whether the way they process ambiguity signals someone building a mental model or someone waiting to be directed, and whether the instincts they reveal under artificial pressure reflect someone who will strengthen the team's decision-making or complicate it. The manager is not watching the performance. The manager is watching what the performance is working to conceal. Mechanism number 4. The check-in signal. There is a specific signal embedded inside the cadence of early check-ins that almost no new hire is taught to read. In organizations where a new hire's trajectory is positive, check-ins evolve. They grow longer. The questions deepen. New responsibilities begin surfacing inside them. The tone shifts from evaluative to collaborative. The manager begins treating the conversation as a planning session rather than an assessment. In organizations where the trajectory has been quietly categorized as limited, check-ins flatten, they stay short. The questions remain surface level. Rescheduling happens with slightly more frequency. The conversations end without new assignments, without deepening scope, without the forward momentum that signals inclusion in what comes next. The new hire in this second pattern typically experiences these check-ins as neutral. Nothing negative was said. The feedback was fine. The manager seems satisfied. What they are not reading is the structural signal embedded in what the check-ins are not becoming. When check-ins stop evolving, they have already become something else. They have become maintenance. And maintenance is what organizations offer people they have quietly decided to manage around. Here's where the permanence of the problem becomes clear. The 90-day evaluation does not produce a preliminary finding. It produces a conclusion, and organizational conclusions about people, once formed, are structurally resistant to revision. The mental model a senior leader or direct manager builds of a new hire in the first 3 months is the model that governs every subsequent decision about that person's scope, visibility, and trajectory. A new hire categorized as limited in month 3 does not receive a formal notification. There is no documented feedback trail that reads like a negative assessment. What happens instead is quieter and more permanent. Scope narrows by attrition, projects are redirected, meetings are dropped from the invitation list, decisions are made in rooms the person is no longer included in. The title stays exactly the same. The architecture of the role gets quietly disassembled around it. By the time the new hire recognizes the pattern, 6 or 8 months have passed. The conclusion reached in month 3 has already been operationalized into the structure of their daily work. Reversing an organizational conclusion from the inside after it has been built into role design, project allocation, and stakeholder perception requires a different order of effort than preventing it would have required. Prevention required 90 days of informed behavior. Correction requires dismantling a permanent impression. The evaluation ends before most people realize it has begun. What comes after is not a second chance. It is the implementation of a decision that was already made. The change in thinking required here is directional. Most new employees spend their first 90 days orienting themselves to the organization, learning its systems, its culture, its vocabulary, its people. That orientation is necessary. It is also incomplete. Because while the new hire is learning the organization is simultaneously learning the new hire. And the new hire is almost never oriented to that second process, what it measures, who conducts it, and what signals determine its output. The 90 days are not a runway. They are a research project being conducted on you. The people who move fastest inside organizations understand this distinction from the beginning. Move. Number 1. In your first 2 weeks, identify the invisible scorecard explicitly. Request a direct conversation with your manager, not a check-in. A specific question. Beyond the formal targets, what does strong judgment look like in this environment during the first 90 days? And what would a concerning pattern look like? Most managers will answer this honestly when asked directly. The answer tells you what the invisible system is actually measuring. Without asking, you are navigating without a map. Move number 2. Engineer your visibility at the correct level. The people whose assessment of you matters most in an evaluation period are not always the people you interact with most frequently. Identify which senior stakeholders have decision-making authority over your role's trajectory. Then create deliberate, substantive contact points with those people in the first 30 days through a project touchpoint, a relevant question routed appropriately, or a contribution that reaches their attention directly. First impressions at the senior level are formed early and revised rarely. Move. Number 3. Read the check-in trajectory actively. After each scheduled check-in with your manager, note specifically whether the conversation evolved from the previous one, whether new responsibilities were introduced, whether the questions deepened, whether the tone shifted from evaluative toward collaborative. A check-in that stays flat is a signal. 2 consecutive flat check-ins are a pattern. There is a structure. Identifying the pattern at week 6 gives you time to alter the inputs. Identifying it at month 5 gives you almost none. The organization is conducting research on you from day 1. The employees who fare best are the ones who conduct research back. The 90-day period is not a test of competence. Competence was assessed before the offer was made. It is a test of something harder to prepare for: situational judgment, environmental reading, and the ability to operate with strategic awareness inside a system that will not announce its own rules. Most people who struggle in that window are not struggling because they lack the skill for the role. They are struggling because they were handed an incomplete picture of what the role's first chapter actually required. They were told to learn the organization. Nobody told them the organization was simultaneously producing a permanent file on them. That asymmetry is not an accident. Organizations benefit from evaluation windows that the evaluated party does not fully understand. The information gap is a structural feature, not an oversight. Closing it requires asking questions that feel presumptuous to ask, reading signals that look like neutral feedback, and treating a period designed to feel like orientation as what it actually is: a compressed, high-stakes, non-repeatable window that determines everything that follows. You were not given the full rulebook on day 1. Almost nobody is. The silent rule is simply this: the organization began deciding about you before you finished deciding about it. The people who understand that earliest are the ones who still have options when the window closes. If this channel is showing you the layer of the system that nobody puts in the onboarding packet, subscribe to Jackson. Every video here is one more rule made visible. The next one goes deeper.